Hello. Today we are going to talk about something that is frankly horrible and prevalent in our country. That is sexual child abuse. With me is psychologist Miss Aarthy, who has also dealt with POXO laws. Can you please introduce yourself and give us a brief idea of what sexual abuse with children is?
All right. Thank you so much for that. I am Aarthy Iyengar. I'm a psychologist. My limited experience as a psychologist has been primarily with POXO survivors, also with delinquents and people dealing with substance abuse, etc. But we
Mm.
could say I have worked with POXO a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that happened to a lot of friends of mine. They were abused as children, and the parents came to know, but they covered it up because they didn't want family to be embarrassed.
Hmm.
So, what is your take on that, and how can the stigma be broken?
The thing with abuse with children is that, there are multiple kinds of trauma. And when it comes to abuse, it's the most avoidable thing. As in, when it comes to a natural calamity, there isn't much you can do about it. When it comes to a war, there isn't much you can do about it. But when it comes to a child being brought up in a safe environment, it's very well in the control of the parents and caregivers. But unfortunately, this is the most prevalent form of trauma, which is the child sexual abuse. Um, And if we look at the probabilities, mostly female children have a higher probability of being victims. And when it comes to stigma, you're very right. It's a very cultural thing as well that people associate a lot of pride with chastity and virginity and all that. And when a child is subject to abuse without consent, the child does not know what the child is going through, and people kind of associate a lot of shame to the victim. So when it comes to therapeutic work, also the primary goal is to externalize this shame. So
And the trauma that the child suffers that lingers on throughout their life. Could you explain a bit about that?
something very classic about sexual abuse is that uh, when it comes to children, when it comes to any age, sexual abuse stays on. But when it comes to children, there is a popular myth that बच्चे हैं भूल जाते हैं आगे स्कूल चले जाएंगे या हंसी खेल में they will forget about the abuse that was met with them. That is the popular myth that people have.
Mm.
That children move on, but that is not exactly the case. And the trauma stays in the body, as in it gets manifested in sleep disturbances, in sudden splurge of anxiety symptoms. Some children just go quiet, but the primary change in the cognition that happens is hate towards their own body. So what I have, here's a little trigger warning. What I have primarily seen in the institution is that um, children indulge in self-harm a lot. Sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's observed and learned, but sometimes they just don't know what to do about it. The shame, the emotional turmoil. So the indulge in self-harm. When you ask them why you do it, it stems from a place of self-hate. They are like, am I so easy a target that just somebody came, broke my autonomy and abused me and left? And now all the shame has been associated with me. I am institutionalized. It's just the self-hate that gets, manifested as self-harm. There is one another thing that happens with trauma is that children get back to the traumatic situation. They prefer it. It's like the burnt child seeks the fire. They come from an abusive home,
Mm.
but they want to get back to it.
Why
There
is that?
isn't much. It's the concept of familiarity. They are familiar with it. So Maslow says that food comes primary, then comes the security needs, then comes the esteem needs. But you somewhere see that the theory has been broken here,
Mm-hmm.
because in the institution, they are getting food, they are getting safety, even esteem needs to some extent. But why do they still want to go back to homes that, given the economic status, could not provide them food or safety? Safety because sometimes the abusers are within the home. But why
Right.
do they still want to go back? It's the familiarity. Burnt child seeks the fire.
Would you think that most of the abuse statistically comes from the home or from relatives?
Yes, statistically speaking, most of the abuse comes from the proximity of the child, the immediate environment, which is the family.
So, yeah, please go ahead.
It's mostly about feeling the safety,
Mm.
consistency. Pretty much, if they have seen you be there around consistently through their breakdowns, then they know that you are safe enough to touch them. It's like
Right.
previously I was touched without consent. That is a different case, but which does not mean that I do not trust anybody ever in the future. So you kind of bring that sort of consistency for them to trust you.
So you can physically protect the child after an incident occurs, but psychologically, how long does it take for the trauma to wash off? Obviously, it cannot be gone away completely, but the symptoms and the relationships that are skewed because of it.
I don't think the goal is ever to make the child forget the abuse,
Mhm.
uh, which is, even if it happens, it would be some sort of disorientation. We do not
Mm.
want to disorient the child from what has really happened. What we want is that the child to remember that something awful happened, but we kind of, as the CBT practitioners would say, cognitively restructure the child to look at the abuse in a different lens and then move on. So the idea is that the trauma or the whatever has happened manifests in symptoms.
Mm.
So it's not like we can directly go and attack the trauma and break it.
Mm.
It manifests in nightmares. It manifests in palpitations. So the goal is to address the nightmares and the palpitations and the sleep and appetite disturbances. So when we address the minute things, minute manifestations, it by itself goes and addresses the trauma eventually. That is the first step. Now the person is in a state to receive what you are saying, as in
Mm.
they are not sleepy during the session. Let's say, for instance, if they are having sleep disturbances, then we address the cognition about again the externalization, what can be done next, etc.
If someone in the audience has gone through this, if they're watching, what can you advise them?
Mm, I would suggest that in case if it's a minor or if it's a parent of a minor who is watching this, please go and uh, file the same with a child welfare committee. The wrong has happened, and it's only fair that justice prevails. That said, many people just want to hide the thing and move on in life. But I get that point of view as well. Either ways, if you don't want to address it legally, which subsequently would lead to psychological addressing of the problem with the child as well, it happens. We get cases directly from the CWCs. That also happens. Not all kids are from the institution. Uh, if you don't want to address the problem legally, seek a psychologist's help.
Mm.
In the internet era, mental health support is very, very accessible when it comes to child helpline is the most known way. But if you Google anything, mental health support is just available. And it's not a very privileged idea to seek
Mm.
therapy. Keep us, the rich people seek therapy. That is true. I do not deny it. But therapy mental health support is accessible to all stratas. Government hospitals have mental health units. I personally interned at the RML hospital in Delhi. There is Safdarjung, AIMS, all of it have mental health units, and support is available in all fee structures per se.
Last question I would like to ask: what kind of services do you provide as a psychologist?
Okay, so uh, I have to briefly tell you about my journey with psychology for that. So I did my bachelor's from Delhi University, master's from Jamia Millia. I finished my master's in say May 24,
Mm,
and in June 24, via the department placement cell itself, I got placed in the place in the institution, and that has been my first job.
mm,
So it's been about what 9-10 months working here. So my services personally so far has been limited to working at the institution, because the kind of emotional labor, to some extent, the physical labor also, because we are, in our work hours, we could be called for crisis counseling at any point. So
mm.
we are always ready for it, alert for it. So given the emotional intensity of the situation, the physical demands of the situation, so far I have primarily been appointed at the institution only.
Mm.
Now I stand at a brink where I decide whether I'm continuing my practice here or going forward with academia or clinical work. Regardless, when it comes to my services, I'm open to counseling sessions that I provide remotely. Yeah, that's pretty much when it comes to services that I provide.
It is commendable what you do, especially knowing what are the stresses. Hats off to you.
Thank you so much for this platform to be vocal about these things. It's very important.
It is very important, especially
Definitely.
for the family. It was an honor talking to you. Uh,
Likewise.